This is the Sick'em Podcast, powered by Rogue Media Network. The Sick'em Podcast is a production of Baylor Athletics. Now, here are your hosts, Katie Smith and the voice of the Bears, John Morris.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Sick'em Podcast, powered by Rogue Media Network. We're glad you're with us again this week. John Morris, Katie Smith, and let's go down the hall, like from where your office and my office is, just down at the end of the hall, and that is the Office of Governance and Regulatory Affairs, previously known as Compliance. But as we all know, compliance is not an office. It's an attitude.
Oh, and a joint responsibility.
And very good.
We're all part of compliance.
There's our PSA for compliance.
I love it.
But that is the physical office.
Yes.
And inside that office, our guest comes to us from, and that is Mabrie Hermann, Assistant AD for Compliance. Mabrie, welcome to you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be joining y'all. I still refer to myself as compliance,
you do.
Even though we've had this new rebrand and all.
Yeah,
but
how did that come about?
Yeah.
Oh, Chad, I think, got excited one day.
I love it.
Our fearless leader, Chad Jackson, and I think we assumed additional responsibilities, NCAA compliance, while it's definitely a shared responsibility. Thank y'all both.
We know that.
Shout out.
Exactly.
And
Compliance paid us to say that.
I like it, but we didn't bet on it.
No,
so we just with the additional responsibilities and how our world is changing day in and day out, thought we needed a little rebrand. So there are lots of NCAA terms. We talk about CARA and RARA and VERA, and now we are the office of GARA.
GARA.
That's
true.
I like
Governance
that.
and Regulatory Affairs.
I like it.
I haven't used that yet, but I certainly will.
Lots of terms.
You talk about how much that world is changing. We've had a few people on talking about NIL, but who better to give us a little insight onto how that's changed y'all's world? Give us kind of a snapshot on how those changes have affected you and your team.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, it all started about 2 summers ago. So my friends and family at times joke, do you even have a job anymore? I'm like, yes. Well, yes,
hope so.
I sure do, because there is still traditional NCAA compliance, but that's no fun to talk about at times. So everyone loves to talk about this new world we're living, name, image, and likeness, NIL. And there are a lot of people in my office who are very deep and a lot smarter on this subject than myself. But our world has really changed these past few months, years, almost at this point, and I think we're still trying to adapt to what this means. I think it's a great concept. Yeah, Katie, I remember your days as a student athlete.
Don't we all?
The good old days.
Absolutely.
The good old days.
When I introduced her to
glory
people.
Years.
She was forever an All-American.
Oh,
so
I am not the podcast guest. Back to Mabrie.
But just the opportunity for student athletes to monetize off of their name, image, and likeness, I think is fantastic. I think how people are using it and the change, and once you let the toothpaste out of the tube, it's really hard to get it back in. So everyone's playing a little catch up. We joke like we're on this axis, but the axis continues to move. And so we're constantly adapting and moving as new guidance comes out, as we learn new things, just to really make sure Baylor is operating within the state law, NCAA rules and regulations, and guidance policy as they come out. So just making sure everyone's educated, and we're doing our best to protect everyone involved.
Yeah, that's such a good point, that it's this constantly moving axis. And so there's not a ton of precedent ever. And so just always so impressed with our compliance or our GARA team. I love GARA. But just how you guys have navigated this new space is so impressive to me.
That's very cool. What is your, in the office of GARA, as the assistant AD for compliance, what would you say, what are your responsibilities in there?
That's a great question. So when you think of the world of NCAA compliance, I would say I'm responsible for the traditional NCAA day-to-day compliance. So you think about eligibility, certifying our student athletes for competition and practice, making sure they're meeting initial eligibility requirements, financial aid. It's this big thing that still is fantastic. Our student athletes on scholarship, working with our financial aid office to make sure everything's executed in a seamless manner. I mentioned a lot of acronyms at the beginning. It's all related to playing and practice seasons and student athlete time management, so heavily involved in that. There's still things like promotional activities that student athletes are involved with. Obviously, name, image, and likeness is a component, but like we still have to monitor practice activities. We have to be involved in like tickets, like student athlete tickets and things along those lines. So there's the traditional basics that I think people don't want to think about, like traditional work and employment. Like there's lots of things related to that. So we're still heavily involved in the monitoring and those aspects of the traditional NCAA bylaw and rules. The rule book's still thick, even though there's been a great modernization to make it. And recruiting, I mean, there's still a bylaw devoted specifically to recruiting that we have to be mindful of. So
That's a full plate.
There's never a dull moment, even though we'd like some dull moments at times. So there's never any dullness.
Yeah. So what I love is Mabrie just listed off, I don't know, it felt like 20 to 30 things that are under her umbrella. And she didn't even really mention the additional responsibilities that have been on her plate outside of the world of governance and regulations. And so, Mabrie, you are the primary sport program administrator for acrobatics and tumbling. You also have kind of recently stepped into this interim role of SWA, so Senior Women's Administrator here, and are sitting in on those calls. So let's go the acrobatics and tumbling route first. Tell us about what that looks like, that role as their sport program administrator.
So working with the acrobatics and tumbling staff, head coach Felicia Mulkey, the student athletes, they are just a breath of fresh air. Like their program is incredible. The culture Coach Fee has built, I'm just privileged to be part of it. So Dee Dee Campbell, I'll shout out to one of our dear old friends. She really set the stage as the primary sport program administrator for acrobatics and tumbling, and then I had the privilege of stepping in when she left us, and I just tried to fill her void. And Coach Mulkey is fantastic, and literally I just feel like I am there to support her, the student athletes, and the program as a whole. We just started our season, so we're 2-0. We have an upcoming meet this Sunday, a competition, so very excited for that. But it's just candidly getting to go travel with the team and just see the recruiting, the development, the skills. I mean, there's never a moment that I'm not mesmerized and in awe with what all the student athletes can do. I think, hands down, when you compare their strength to every other sport, and I love all of our sports, but they just, it's incredible, the things that they can do. And I'm always recruiting people to come to events because it's just mind-blowing, the strength and the sport and just how it's developed and always changing, like, and growing. And I think we're at 51 schools now. And so it's an emerging sport in the NCAA realm. And so I just continue to support and push it forward, kind of like compliance is a shared responsibility and on everyone's mind. Want that for acrobatics and tumbling as well.
I love it. Greatest program in the world, too. Greatest coach in the world.
In
the world. Yeah.
Literally.
Tell me who's greater.
I can't. No one is.
There's nobody.
I love that. But that never gets old.
It is fun, and the way Fee runs the program and the way she promotes the sport also, it's just great. So,
and
well
done
there.
She invented it. She literally invented the sport, which hearing her talk about the sport and just how it came to fruition, and I mean, she's lived it, and it's amazing listening to her promote the sport.
So you're the sport administrator for acrobatics and tumbling. Also, as Katie mentioned, the interim senior women's administrator here at Baylor. That's a big role.
Yeah.
That's got to take some time also.
That is a big role. So back in the day, I did 2 internships at the Big 12 Conference, and it was fabulous. I remember doing my internships. I was with Drew Hancock and Dana Sheriff, who Dana is still at the conference office, and I remember sitting in on the SWA calls. Now we have Zoom, so we can see everyone, but just literally the good old conference calls back in the day.
A simpler time.
Right.
Yeah.
No one could see anyone.
Didn't have
you
to
could
brush
mute.
your hair. Yeah.
Right. You didn't have to look decent. So I remember sitting on those calls and just thinking, these women are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And now I get to be a part of those calls.
That's wild.
And I am just so flattered and honored, first of all, that Mac would even consider me for this interim position. And I'm just excited to serve in this capacity, to support Mac and Baylor and all of our student athletes and programs through the governance structure with the Big 12. And so it's a great opportunity, thrilled to serve. And you're right, though. It is very time consuming.
Yeah, I bet
and
that's
you
right.
got to do some prep work.
Yeah.
I also was at the Big 10 conference. And so having that conference experience, your mind's wired a little bit differently. And you're thinking about scheduling and missed class time. And so it's different than my traditional NCAA compliance world.
Yeah.
So at times I have to rewire my brain and really think, okay, what do you need to think about on this call to prep properly?
That's a good
Right.
point. That's a really good point.
Can we go back to A&T for just 1 minute
Sure.
before we get too
Love
far removed?
talking about
I don't like
them.
getting away from A&T. They're fascinating.
We're not going to get very far away. But before we do get away, there was a meet recently, our first home meet.
You
know what's coming?
I was sad we glazed over this as well.
Exactly.
It's good we're going back.
So there is a break between at halftime, I guess. And what do we do to entertain the fans at halftime? But bring out some of our women in the athletic department, like Mabrie Hermann, and have them build a pyramid. Yes.
Other duties as assigned, y'all.
How was that?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I did a round off back handspring. My dad jokes. That was the extent of my gymnastics career. No,
we're going.
I was
like,
I missed that.
No, I can do it on the trampoline, but that doesn't happen very often. So maybe one
Noted
day
for
I'll
the future.
maybe a cartwheel in the hallway after the podcast.
Okay.
But so that was the extent of my tumbling, and
Sure.
I did that because I really wanted to be an 8th grade cheerleader at Lake Air Middle School
There you
back
go.
in the day.
Who
Go
didn't?
Leopards. So I was a base. I was a base, traditionally a base.
Yeah,
I
some
mean,
height to ya.
some height to me. Like, I'm physical. I'm very strong, Katie.
Sure.
Like, you've seen me work out.
No, I know.
So it was a new experience for me because I was a top during the pyramid.
She was.
And I
have video. I'll send you the video.
I would really like that.
Yeah.
There is, a video. And there's
you
some
sent me
photos.
the picture, but
I
it didn't capture the whole thing.
But when I'm looking at my face in these pictures, it is pure joy and also pure what is going on. Like, I am so nervous. Don't drop me. There are certain things I never thought I'd do in life. Being on top of a pyramid was one thing I never thought I'd do. So I'm very grateful. Treasure, Kristen, and Kelsey all really did some strong weightlifting that day and got me up there, and I had the time of my life for the 5 seconds I was up there.
That's
my
great.
Sikkim wasn't on cue, but other than that,
you had so many other things going for you. You can't be perfect.
What a moment.
You can't always get it. What a
10. Moment in your athletic
other
career.
duties as assigned. We were showcasing its Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we were. It was with the mental health staff, health and wellness staff, and so I was thrilled that they asked me to join.
That's
I think
awesome.
some other people were also asked to join and might
they
not have
weren't
participated.
Like someone in this room?
Someone in this room. Was it you, J-Mo?
Oh, it was not me. I was
Might
busy.
have been J-Mo.
No, maybe it was you, Katie.
I'll tell you, just to set the record straight on the podcast, I did not know we did this. And so when people asked me, I thought this was a bit that the department was doing about that we put adults up there without stretching and just throw them up there. And I said, I said, sure, I'm in. And I just thought everyone was kidding. And then Mabrie was like, why aren't you coming to practice?
She was a no-show.
I was a no-show. I was like, I'm so sorry.
We were ready to execute.
A bit. I thought it was very funny. Dr. Mo was in on it. I was like, you guys are great. But
funny.
I wouldn't have done what Mabrie did anyway.
She could have been my base.
It's true.
I could have been your base.
You could have held me.
I could have. But
well, very
alas.
impressive.
Well,
very
thank
impressive
you.
that you did by everyone involved. And doesn't that speak again to the athleticism of our student athletes in that sport?
Correct.
I guess it makes you appreciate them even more, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
It does.
That's scary.
And there were a couple of times when we were practicing our quote-unquote bit that some might have mentioned.
So you agree.
That I was not prepared to go that high, and so I fell a couple of times, but I did not hit the mat. They caught me.
Wow.
And there were athletic trainers around to help if needed. Some people
knock
on the team.
wood, no first aid was needed.
No needed. So we've talked about her illustrious acrobatics and tumbling career
Yes.
as SPA and participant.
Yes.
You mentioned your dreams of being an 8th grade cheerleader, but Mabrie Hermann, most people refer to her as the Queen of Waco, but just
understandably
everyone knows Mabrie. Mabrie knows everyone, but has grown up in Waco. And so, was it always, wow, I'd love to work for Baylor Athletics one day, or how do we get here?
Oh, that is a great question, Katie,
Thank
and
you.
so loaded.
So
loaded.
So, grew up in Waco as, Queen of Waco. So honored to have that royalty title. So I went to Texas A&M for my undergrad and master's, and I always said I'll never be back in Waco unless Baylor avails an opportunity for me that I cannot turn down.
Wow.
Well, I mentioned my Big 12 internship, and unbeknownst to me, I was in championships, and my little cubicle was outside of the head of compliance office, Loria Bahara.
Okay.
And also, unbeknownst to me, she was interviewing for the head compliance job at Baylor, but it was all on the DL, and no one knew. And so I was applying for jobs all over the country in any area. I always say I never chose compliance. It chose me. And here I am 12 years later. But Lori took a chance on me, and Baylor availed an opportunity to me that I was unable to pass up. And so Lori was here for a year, and then Chad came, and I've been working with and for Chad for the time since.
That's
so Baylor's an incredible place to be. I always say growing up in Waco, I grew up in Waco, and wasn't necessarily in the Baylor bubble. So when I started working at Baylor, there were just all of these different experiences and opportunities that I never had growing up in Waco. It's kind of this new bubble. So I love when my worlds cross, my Baylor world and my Waco world.
So
and
fun.
Never thought I'd be back, but thrilled to be back.
Yeah.
And that was 2011. When you came to
2011, yes.
Right.
That was the first stint. I hadn't even graduated college yet with my master's. I started in October, graduated with my master's in December, but my dad was so excited because he could cut me off insurance because I had benefits now. He couldn't wait.
I know that feeling. But didn't you get some good advice from Drew Hancock along the way also?
I did. I got great advice from Drew Hancock. So Drew Hancock, I mentioned I did 2 internships at the Big 12, and I really thought I was just so great. I have the best personality, this hard work ethic. How would they not hire me at the Big 12?
Yeah.
And Drew Hancock gave me not only my first opportunity with an internship, but also my first rejection. And so it actually happened timing-wise. Someone was leaving the Big 12 in championships. It was just meant to be.
It was meant to be.
It was not meant to be.
Not meant to be.
So once again, that's how compliance chose me. I did not choose compliance. So I really always thought I'd be in events and championships at a conference office. But I think once you get on campus and you experience campus life and can really see your day-to-day job impacting student athletes like Katie Stager being one of them, former All-American, and just like getting to know everyone, student athletes, family members, that really was like, okay, this is what I enjoy. This is what I love. Cheering, everyone's cheering for the same team. You're not having to be neutral like you are at the conference office. So it was a whole new experience for me. So yeah, Drew told me, you got to get your master's. I was like, I don't need my master's, but I got my master's, and she knew something was going to happen for me. I just had this whole plan in my mind, and she changed my plan and always gave me great advice. And still to this day, we have a great relationship and miss her and think of her often.
Yeah. Very nice. We're glad you tuned in to the Sikkim Podcast today, powered by Rogue Media Network. I've had the privilege of calling games, telling stories about Baylor Athletics for a long time. Storytelling is an art, and there's a network in town doing just that. Rogue Media Network has produced over 80 original podcasts and shows ranging from comedy, true crime, business, and sports. If there's a story to tell, Rogue Media Network is telling it. You can find this podcast and all the other great Rogue Media Network shows on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Mabrie Hermann hanging out with us today, and it is way too much fun. Thank you so much for joining us. We've already talked about how busy you are, but you keep coming back to this compliance found you. You did not find compliance, and I love that. And so I can say this because I think the business office gets a stereotype at times, but sometimes it's the number crunchers, the rule followers, the analytics, and while you are all of these things, you are the most personable person, I think, probably on this hallway, Mabrie. And so what is it about compliance that lets you use that strength of yours?
Oh, well, Katie, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're also on this hallway and John Morris. So
sorry.
I don't know. I mean, we'll say maybe at the end of the hallway,
At the
I
end
might
of
be
the
the
hallway.
most personable.
Yeah.
Also, I do have a great view.
Yeah.
That's one other
You
thing that we
do.
didn't
You
mention.
do.
I have
Yeah.
a fantastic view in my office.
Oh,
I'm
that
very grateful for
window.
that. That
University Parks Drive,
can
all
watch.
the open parking spaces in front of our building,
It's
all
very
those things.
limited,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anyone get in trouble doing parking or getting towed, but I'll keep
Must
my
not have
eye
been
out.
looking last week when I
Gara.
drove in.
Oh no. Well, back to compliance, personality. Compliance does get a negative connotation, and there are times where people say, "Oh, the police are coming.
Sure.
Beware." I get called the sheriff, which I have just told is an honor because the sheriff's one of the highest ranking officials, and so it is an honor to be called that. But I joke, I am here to protect and serve to some capacity, and so I try and bring a human element to compliance. And because there are, times where we do have to say no. I mean, that's part of our job, but my job at the end of the day is to protect Baylor, to protect the coaches, and to protect the student athletes. And it's not, I don't like having to say no. Like, we want to get there if there's a way, but sometimes the way is not okay, not permissible. And so trying to find options when there are options, and definitely having human aspects, getting to relate to people, getting to know people, and so we can communicate, because there are hard times. And unfortunately, we have to have investigations at times, infractions cases. So, I mean, having that relationship and knowing people and who they are, and I think them knowing me and how I operate, and that I have their best interest at heart, I think is very helpful in my day-to-day tasks.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, that's very well said. And isn't that part of, you were talking about your time in the Big 12 office, you spent time in the Big 10 conference office, but isn't that one of the beauties of being on a campus, especially Baylor?
It is. And I mentioned earlier just the ability to have like a commonality. We are all cheering for the same people. We're all supporting each other. Like, everyone's job relates, and it's to support each other. And everything Katie does day in and day out, everything J-Mo does day in and day out, and everything I do day in and day out is to support Baylor and all of the entities involved. Great. And so it's nice having that uniting factor.
Yeah, for
in
sure.
everything we do.
We talk a lot about preparing champions for life when we think about everyone working towards the same goal. And so what does it kind of mean for you when you get to see student athletes that you've had such great relationships with over 4 years come back for a game, or just come back and stop by the office?
So Friday, I was walking down to football to have a conversation about something, and I look over, and there's Jalen Petrie and Terrell Bernard, and I haven't seen them in a year.
Wow.
And so it was so exciting to see them. what does it mean? A, it means I'm getting old.
No, not. Go to B. Go to B.
Yeah, no. It's so neat. We get to know student athletes and their family members, and we're very, very lucky. And not every student athlete, not every parent, not every brother, sister, but the people we are able to see and create those relationships with, it's so much fun watching former student athletes who have married other student athletes. I've been lucky enough to go to weddings. I love when they come back and get honored and they have kids. Yeah. Like, how fun is that? We better start recruiting those athletes at this point. But it's so neat creating those meaningful relationships that last. And even though we don't talk every day, like, it's so fun. I mean, these guys have heard me talk about agents and your Uncle Sam that you're going to meet. And so we were talking about taxes. And I was telling Terrell how proud I am of him that he survived snow. And so we were talking about taxes in New York, and Jalen just overcoming the adversity with his season and having an incredible rookie season. Like, I love seeing everyone just be amazing, like, go on and continue being these incredible young men. And of course I had to ask about their families because I love their moms and just how everything was going. So I told them when I saw them Friday, I was like, I needed this. This is what fills my heart. Yeah. Like, I needed to see y'all. Sometimes the day in, it gets tough and it's a grind. And so seeing them, I was able to reset and, like, this is why I do what I do. Yeah. So it was needed. That's it filled me with joy. It was great seeing them.
That. Wow. That is so good. And that really is one of the best parts of our jobs, isn't it? I mean, you get to know these student athletes as people, and like you said, know their families, and you want to stay in touch with them, and you want to know what happens, to them and with them when they leave Baylor, and you want them to be successful. So isn't that so fun?
And getting to witness it, and at times be part of it. Yeah. I mean, getting to go to their next level of games and cheering for them. It's neat. I mean, we get to see the fans, and I'm sure at times I have fan moments, but, like, they're people. Yeah. And so getting to know everyone as people and knowing they're competing day in and day out and working so hard, but like, truly just getting to see everyone's growth and getting to know them, it makes me so happy. And have fan moments when they're successful.
Nice. Yeah, that's great.
And what I love about that is there's so much impact there because of how much you guys interact with the student athletes. And like you said, it's not every student athlete, but I think the default is so many people are, of course the coach impacted their life, and of course maybe this professor. But I think that is something that's so cool about Baylor, and specifically our compliance office, that you guys have such good relationships. I mean, we'll just have the student athletes walk by, and you can tell they might be here for something tutoring, but they want to go say hi to Mabrie or the rest of our governance and
regulatory affairs.
Very good. You can say compliance, Katie.
Thank you for freeing me from that.
Hey, I do think it has to do with our great candy that we have within our office.
There's the
answer.
You've got to have a great candy basket, but I do think it's personalities too. Obviously, the candy just adds.
They come for the candy, but they stay for the relationships and the life impact.
But I also think too, that's like attesting to what we're about at Baylor. Like, that MAC avails the opportunity for compliance and sport programs for compliance to travel with them and be part of the program and really integrate us being part of the sport program day in and day out and getting to build those relationships. So it's important.
That's great. We talked earlier about you being the Queen of Waco.
Sure.
Grew up in Waco.
Queen of compliance, Queen of Waco.
Wow, so many areas you rule over.
Just royalty day in and day out.
Didn't originally come to Baylor, but finally saw the light, came to Baylor and got here.
That was the one mistake.
I think
need to leave for a little bit.
A lot of people know your parents, Scotty and Tracy Hermann, which is great. Scotty's still officiating. Has been for a long time.
Long time. So Scotty's turning 70 this year.
No.
And he looks incredible, y'all.
He does.
I have great genetics on both sides.
Yeah.
We'll just go ahead and say that. But, so my dad, he did Division I for 20 years and then ultimately retired from Division I. But you can still catch him on a court at a JUCO or MCC or Division II or Division III. And, y'all, he loves it. Keeps him in shape. And my mom and I still to this day say it's the only time he has control in his life when he's officiating on the basketball court, because we rule everything else. Yes, yeah. She's the true queen of Waco.
Okay,
I'm just her prodigy.
I can see that.
Yeah,
there you go.
And so, yeah,
that's good. And your birthday's coming up March 3rd. We should mention that, so everyone
put
that on your calendar. But with such a basketball influence in your family, you always thought there was this big party around your birthday every year on March 3rd.
It was. So every year we'd go to. It started with the high school state basketball tournament. So I joke I'm a March Madness baby, but literally my world has always revolved around March Madness. Yeah. My dad officiating. We've gotten some great trips surrounding my birthday. So actually, my mom had me, and then I think you left the next day to go officiate a basketball game. Like really committed to officiating. But so I'm March 3rd, my mom's March 11th, and then my grandmother's March 20th. And so we're like the trifecta in March.
There you go.
We are generally traveling for basketball. So we love it. All of our March Madness, and it is madness surrounding basketball. So growing up, I used to go to the state tournament in Austin, and it was so much fun because I'd get to bring some friends. We'd go ice skating, stay in a hotel, order room service.
Ice skating.
Yeah.
Inside,
there was a ice skating rink in Austin. Waco did not have one at that point. So it was a big thing going down for the state basketball tournament. Of course, I didn't know that's why we were going down.
Right.
It was just,
my
dad has a game.
Yeah.
Well, then growing up, going to the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City, had some great birthdays and regionals, like going out to Arizona one year. And it was always fun whenever my dad would be officiating and Baylor would be at the regional site. He wouldn't get to call the Baylor games, but we'd get to be with all the Baylor fans and our friends and at the same site. So it's always been really fun. And inside sport, obviously, that was what we chose.
Yeah.
Inside, right.
Or it was
Climate
chosen
control.
for me. Yeah.
I love that. So you talk about Waco getting an ice skating rink, fun. But what for someone who's been in Waco for the majority of their life, other than that stint, what's kind of the biggest change you've seen?
Wow.
It's probably hard to pinpoint just one, but what comes to mind?
So Waco, just in general, has grown significantly. I've always said Waco is what you make of it.
So I like that.
There's always opportunities in Waco and always things going on, whether it be a volunteer event or some cool entity coming to Waco. Like, there's always something going on. It's just you have to know and look for it. And I just cannot believe I learned this term for my brief stint in the Chicago Big Ten office, gentrification.
Yeah.
I cannot believe how much downtown Waco is gentrifying and changing, and like just the development of older buildings and to Baylor. I mean, I think Baylor's success has definitely helped with that growth, and I love just how the Waco community supports the Baylor community, and seeing that integration has been really neat. Candidly, that's been the biggest change for me, just because I grew up in my Waco bubble, and we grew up going to Baylor games, but it was a different time.
Yeah.
So the success of Baylor and being on the inside of the success of Baylor has been really special.
Yeah. So cool.
That's great. Well, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you being with us. Very fun.
This was so fun.
Very
I was
fun.
so
Good
nervous,
job.
had so much angst, and y'all were just fabulous.
Well, yeah,
You're fabulous.
We make people nervous, don't we?
Y'all are. Y'all are very intimidating.
Yeah.
Specifically, J-Mo.
Truly, I was listening to you and Pat Nunley this weekend, and I just think y'all are quite the dynamic duo.
They're
and
fun.
now you and Katie are such a dynamic
How
duo.
about that?
I would
was
never
like,
try to compete with Pat.
Never. But how could I add to something that's so seamless?
And you
yes.
did.
Well, thank you.
Here we are.
Absolutely
I
did.
had so much fun, so thank you for having me today.
Well done. Thank you, Mabrie.
Have you been looking for a new podcast to listen to? Are you interested in true crime, funny one-star reviews, or inspiring stories? What about the history of Waco or the famous people who have lived and worked here, kind of like Mabrie Hermann?
The queen.
All these and more are produced by Rogue Media Network. There are over 80 different shows, including this one, with more coming all the time. If there's a story to tell, Rogue Media Network is telling it. Watch on YouTube or listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, very good. Fun to visit with Mabrie. Thanks for your time. Katie, this was fun for us, wasn't it?
This was fun. It was selfish. I love spending time with Mabrie, and so getting her on a headset, that was such a blast.
I had to come get her out of your office to come in here to record the podcast.
I know, we're trouble.
We were working so hard.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Work. Exactly. Thank you all very much. We appreciate everyone tuning in for Mabrie and for Katie. I'm John Morris. We appreciate you being with us on this week's Sick 'em Podcast, powered by Rogue Media Network.
You've been listening to the Sick 'em Podcast, powered by Rogue Media Network. The Sick 'em Podcast is a production of Baylor Athletics.